council, but he was looking for citizen volunteers to sit on this board. And I just wondering who was leaving from this board.
I don't think anyone was up, I just looked at that, or you might be up.
I just got reappointed.
Oh, yeah, you're right, It's a later change the website.
Get on the one to the right,
Well, I would think
and
it
then.
make more sense if you went to the alderman
And then
position.
there you
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See,
Yeah.
I'm not an alderman anymore.
That's fine. Probably a good one. Well,
go. Here, I'll just say.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Like you say,
It's, that's the way they've done it in the past.
Well, I mean, what you're supposed to do is fill out. That you were willing, you'd be willing to serve now.
And I did
Yes.
that, for this, not only for this one now, but I gave one to the clerk last night.
Yeah.
For the upcoming term, so I'm asking to stay on as alternate. But,
Well, I thought you got voted in, tell them decline it. So it doesn't automatically
it
go.
doesn't automatically go. to the
No,
secretary. Yeah.
All right,
This,
we
Mr.
are
Newman very
live.
crudely pointed out to me several times on Facebook.
We got 1 minute to go and then we'll.
All right, we started it because we have somebody zooming in, so we weren't quite sure on
So
how
we're on here.
to Zoom plus YouTube.
Are the owls alive?
They're awake.
That clock's on. We'll call the April Water and Wastewater Commission meeting order. Start out with roll call.
Commissioner Engel,
Here.
Lodell,
Here.
Briggs,
Here.
Patrick,
Here.
Bushki.
Here. Citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the what happened in the consent agenda? That was always.
I don't know.
I can do that.
What did we do? What?
Usually the consent agenda is next. But we'll go as the agenda is
Yeah.
printed. Discuss with possible action regarding sewer and water additions to Tower Drive parcels 041 and 042.
They did not come to the plan commission, did
All
they?
right.
No.
I think we moved it up this way and had requested, but we don't see them here tonight. So we got some information from the Town and Country Engineering regarding that, which is in your packet as item C. The project would not be eligible for safe and clean drinking water loans. It's due to the nature of the project, so we would not be receiving funding for that or principal forgiveness on that funding. Do you see your item C in there?
I saw it online.
It looks like an email.
A letter? Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's got the cost in there, potential cost for the project as well. Looks like they didn't necessarily recommend pursuing options with development.
Who's that?
Town and Country Engineering.
Kind of in the middle here, I mean, I guess I'd kind of look at this as a development.
Right.
Shouldn't this go through the planning commission before it even comes here?
Well, he wanted it to come here first because the sewer and the water was the biggest hurdle, I guess, to look at. So if we were looking at any sort of feasibility, they put it through here first.
Okay.
I don't think
Planning
it was more
commission might have
informational to come to us with, just informational.
So planning commission may have some other alternatives for them if they were to develop. But, you know, the feasibility from our standpoint, I don't know that it's feasible to
No,
pursue those costs.
not at $100,000.
More than that.
I think his angle was
Plus
that we would
50
pay for this because it's a
45.
dead end there.
Yeah.
That was his angle.
Yeah.
But that's got to do with the sewer part of this. That should be up to him.
No, and it looks like the funding wouldn't necessarily be eligible to, you know, if we were to be able to have some sort of grant funding or something with this, it might be a little more appealing.
So where we're at on that is it's gonna go to the planning commission?
Well, it was on the planning commission agenda for last month, right, Gene?
Right, but he didn't show up.
I think they just moved it to next one.
So we had no action or whatever it was, but yeah.
But I don't think there's any action for us at this point either.
Done.
Moving on, discuss the possible action regarding long-range cash flow projections and for water and sewer presented by Lisa
Try it,
Trabowski,
Trubetowski.
Hey, Catholic.
from Ayers.
They use a concept.
So you got the floor, Lisa.
All right, so in your packets, you should have 4 true packets. There's gonna be 2 presentations and then 2 full tables. We're just gonna go through the presentations unless you have any specific questions on the tables themselves. But really, we just hit the highlights of all of those within the presentation. So I'm not sure if you have the water or sewer first in your
Water.
packet. Water?
Right.
Yep. water.
Okay,
So I have the 2 rate study cases in there, the presentations. I did not print, but I can quickly.
the presentation.
Yeah.
first? Okay.
I can. I didn't know if that was like a Zoom thing or, okay.
Are you able to just pull it up on screen?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
so. Hmm. Sorry, Steve. Okay, back there.
That goes out to the, or adoring public, right? When you're doing the presentation, they'll be able to see it on YouTube.
Correct, yeah, I haven't used it this way before, so I'm a little unless you green on that part. For you guys. If you wanted to get started with
Okay,
that,
yep,
like the
I'll do
background,
that.
and I'm sorry.
Okay, so we were asked to do the long-range cash flow analysis to identify the fiscal sustainability of both the water and sewer utility. Both are contemplating capital projects as well as experiencing increasing operating and maintenance expenses. So what our process is we look at 4 or 5 years back, the current, and then projecting out 10 years. And the reason we don't want to just look at 1 year is because utilities have volatile maintenance expenses. They're very capital intensive, so it costs a lot to put the infrastructure in, and then you have to maintain operations 365 days a year. So just looking at 1 year, you could have a low maintenance year or you could have a high. And so you don't want to make projections off of just 1 year. So that's why we look at 5 years historical. And then we incorporate your capital improvement plan and make projections on whether you can afford to use cash or if you have to issue debt for your future projects. And then we do show the rate impact of rate increases that we are projecting out. Looking at the water specifically, you're currently going through a conventional rate case. I'm not sure exactly where that's at. Last I looked, the revenue requirement was released in December, and this is a 2-step increase. Step 1 is 20.41%, and then cumulative with the step 1 and adding in step 2, it would be 47.84%. Prior to that, your last conventional rate case was in 2015. So from 2015 to current, you have increased your utility finance plant by 18%. So you've added 18% capital that has grown. Your operating and maintenance and pilot and depreciation, you've averaged increase of 22%. Your PSC annual report for 2022, because that's the last available that we have, was below benchmark at 1.96%. If you want to go to the second slide, this is where I'm at. And then your last simplified rate increase was in December 1st, 2022. And you completed one before that. At a 7.7 rate increase since then. Okay. Looking at the next slide. There should be a difference.
Okay.
This one starts 26.
Yeah.
So
Yes, I had a different,
No different presentation, okay.
so the last simplified was January 1st, 2022 at 3%. So this must be, was this the example I sent you?
That could very well be, I
Okay.
apologize.
No, that's okay.
The one you sent us in March, 26th, 8th,
Yep,
that's the one to use.
Well, by simplified, that just means we just increased it without the study.
correct. So simplified, and later we talk about this at the end, when we have our recommendations, but you have to qualify for it, and it's a certain percentage. Currently, it's at 4.1%. Last year, it was 8%. The year before that, it was 6.5, but historically, for so many years, it was 3%. But now PSC has caught up with inflation, and those have increased and changed throughout the year.
And we have to do a rate study every, what, 10 years?
As a Class C, you can do up to 40% cumulative of simplified. So Class ABs can only do it simplified since their last conventional rate case up to 5 years. So as a Class C, you're able to do up to 40% cumulative.
Oh, it's 40%. 40%.
That's if you do continuously do
Oh.
simplified, you can only do that up to 40%. And
Only
then you have to do.
There's no time limit.
They're
There's
not for
5%
Class C. For
increase.
AB, there is the 5-year window.
Okay, we're here.
Yay, okay, so we would talk through that, but yeah, so your last simplified, you did January 1st, 2022, and that was the typical 3%. And then if we want to go to the next page. So looking historically at rate performances, so when you develop a revenue requirement, there's basically 2 methods recognized, and that's a cash basis and then a utility basis, which the PSC uses the utility basis. But we do show both. So your cash basis, and we'll talk about this with sewer as well, but that is your true cash expenses. So that's your operating and maintenance and pilot, your debt, and your cash funded capital. So that is capital that you're paying with your cash reserves or user fees. It's not debt funded or it doesn't include grants. So for on a cash basis, your rates are pretty sufficient, except for when you have those higher cash funded capital years. Utility basis, so this is how the PSC develops their revenue requirement off of this basis, and that's your operating and maintenance and pilot, your depreciation, and then what they call this net investment rate base. And then they have a benchmark return on investment that they have you need to earn within your rates. And so that is currently about 6.5%, and that fluctuates, and it's based off of the bond market, the municipal bond market, plus like 2%. So it does fluctuate throughout the year, but there is a floor that they set, which is a 4.9%. So then we calculate out, and your net investment rate base is basically your undepreciated assets. So your rates need to recover the current depreciation, and then you're earning future to invest in capital on your net investment rate base, your undepreciated assets. So then that's the calculated ROI for the 24 budget is looking at 533,154. Then you'd subtract out any other non-user rate revenues, your other revenue. That is what you determine as your revenue requirement. So then you have to determine what percentage increase you need on user rates based off of what your revenue requirement is. So if this is just looking at your budget, not what your conventional rate case went through. And then we have that rate adequacy. So we can see for years, your rates haven't been adequate. And then for the budget year, it looks like about 20% rate adjustment needed based off, again, 2024 budget. We want to go to the next slide, are there any questions on that? Okay. Looking at your reserves, you do have very healthy reserves, which we'll see allows you to pay for capital projects with cash rather than having to debt fund all your capital projects. So we set our own benchmark at 6 months of your operating and maintenance expenses plus 100% debt, and that's looking at next year's information. So that is that target at the bottom, and the line is where you were at historically. We want to go to the next slide. So this is your capital improvement plan. Noted on here, we have 2024 to 2028. And then we put in a cash funded capital placeholder, just averaging out what you would expect to spend each year, just to see how it would cash flow when we're projecting out further than your 5-year capital improvement. So we just have noted on here, last night, they approved to move forward with a borrowing, and that included a water tower painting. So that is noted in here. Otherwise, everything based on the information that we have could be cash funded. We want to go to the next slide. So this is that future long-range cash flow analysis. Like I mentioned, you have that 2-step rate increase, not knowing exactly when it will be effective. We made some estimates. The first one would be in May 1st of this year, and then next year just did half a year for the step 2. So with that increase, we aren't showing that you would necessarily need any increases, because for majority of the time you would be positive in your net annual cash flow. So the way this looks at it is the very top is your revenues. You have your user rate revenues, your other revenues, less your expenses, your operating maintenance, and your pilot. Then you have that net before debt service. So that line is important because that needs to be at least 1.1 or 1.25, depending on the type of debt you have, more than what your annual debt service payment is. So you do need to maintain a certain debt coverage requirement based on the type of debt that you have. So then we have what your debt service payments are. That new debt service, the second line, is based on that water tower painting. Then you have a small transfer out. And then we have your capital improvement projects. Again, the cash funded placeholder. We're showing the debt proceeds from the debt issued, your net annual cash flow. So you do see a couple negative years, but they're higher capital improvement cash funded years. And then we show what your restricted and unrestricted cash balance is. So you can see that it relatively stays the same where you're at, even with funding all of these projects using cash. So that all-in debt coverage. So when you issue revenue debt, you have a debt coverage requirement, but we want to look at all in. So revenue debt just looks at revenue debt for debt coverage. We want to consider any general obligation debt, revenue debt, and your pilot payment, and making sure that it stays above a certain level. And then we just know what the PSC has a cash on hand threshold, and you are meeting or exceeding that.
So that's what the anticipated rate increase,
Yep.
we're stabilizing with that.
Yep, yep.
But just the rate increase that we have now, no future.
Correct. This is showing without any future rate increases.
So you could likely anticipate your next timeline with this.
Correct. And
Sure.
this is something that's good to do every year, every couple years, because projects change. Every year, your projects are changing. You could have a change in revenues, you could have changes in operating and maintenance expenses. Right now, for that operating and maintenance expense line, we just show a 1% annual inflation. So all these things continuously change. So doing this, continuously updating it, helps you see when you may need a future increase. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Looking at the impact on an average residential user as far as the water, this is based off of just the percentage increase that in general is over, but when the PSC does their cost of service, certain percentages of classifications, residential might go up more than commercial or vice versa. So the actual impact might be a little bit different. And actually, I was given what they were kind of anticipating for increases. So where we show the average residential user would go up $4.25 with that 20.41%, based off of some preliminary numbers the PSC gave staff, it would actually be $4.96. And then the second step, we show 5.71, their preliminary numbers, it's actually 6.68. And then I'll wait till sewer and then we'll talk about the rest. You wanna go? So here is where we talk about recommendations. We always say if you qualify for a simplified rate increase, do it. It's easy and it keeps up. So then if you aren't doing a conventional for 10 years, it lessens the impact of a large increase. But you can't do a simplified until your conventional has been in place for a full calendar year and then file your annual report after that. So we show that second step increase being July of 2025. So then you would have to have a full year of 2026 rates in place, file your annual report in 2027 for 2026, and then you would be able to see if you qualify for a simplified.
I did get some information. I don't think it adjusted this, but I think the second step the PSC wants to put into place like at December of 24 now.
Okay.
It's a really tight.
From step one to
window,
step
yeah,
two.
from-
Okay.
And when's the last time we did a conventional rates then?
2015,
Wow.
so almost 10 years.
And it was, we need to put that off as long as we can.
If you have larger projects, it is better to keep up with it, or if you qualify for the simplified,
as
because it's
you
just
do the
compounding. Because, you did do one simplified in there, but that's why you have this large increase, because you've accumulated all these assets and your rates haven't been recovering on that, and you have increasing operating maintenance. So that's why you're having this large increase, because you waited so long and only did one simplified in between that. So that's why if you qualify, continue to do so. And depending on the type of projects you're doing, maybe not wait so long, to do a full conventional.
And the conventional's quite a bit more costly than the.
Yes,
I think
that's
my
the
bill
thing.
for the simplified rate case was like $60.
Yeah.
And I think
Like that.
on
Yeah.
conventionals over 10 grand.
Yep,
Yeah,
We had a neighboring community over the course of the last few months that discovered that when they did their conventional, they had increased rates 95%, which
Yeah.
was a bit of a shock for a
yep.
while.
I've had one that was almost 200%,
Well,
60s,
we don't want to do
90s.
that.
It's,
Let's not do it.
so then on here, I just show, for the simplified, there's two requirements that you have to meet, and that's that rate of return has to be below benchmark and with whatever increase it is at the time. So like it's 4.1%, adding that on, you cannot go above that benchmark. And then same with your net operating income, it has to be less than 6% of your annual expenses. So those are like the qualifications that you need, as well as if you did a simplified, you have to wait a full 12 months. You don't have to file an annual report or anything. It's just a matter of 12 months for a simplified. So there's that class C maximum 40% cumulative of simplifieds before they would make you do a conventional rate case to do any increases. And just noting, conventional rate cases take 9 to 12 months, possibly longer, depending. So it is time, there's a lot of time and you have to plan for that, and it is costly. Yeah. So any questions on the water portion?
So what you're saying is with the two simplifieds we've done, or the 2-step, we should be good until year what?
Well, right now, through 2033, we're projecting 10 years where
If we continue to do this.
I don't even show any simplified in there right now, but if you would qualify, recommend doing those. But yeah, I mean, with this large increase, you are going to be, accumulating a lot of cash and be able to afford.
making up for lost time.
Yeah, well, that's because, yeah, you have that big, large,
Basically 10 years.
yep. All right, so sewer. I'm not gonna go through the first slide because we talked about it with the water. Looking at your rates historically, your last increase was 2010, and then there's a little chart provided by staff, thank you, of the increases that you've had in the past. You can go to the next slide. So again, your historical rate performance, looking at a cash basis, and with sewer, you could do it either way. There is larger, again, cash funded capital, so that's where sometimes it shows that your rates aren't adequate. Looking at a utility basis, even if we removed that rate of return line, so this is, again, I explained how the PSC math works, or the PSC uses the utility basis. That rate of return, even if we zero that out, where you're not requiring your rates to recover that portion, your rates would still not be adequate. You wouldn't be funding the depreciation fully in that. So if you look, budget 2024 shows rate adequacy negative 256,144. That benchmark rate of return 152,425. So even if we made that zero, you're not fully recovering for a depreciation portion.
About $100,000.
Yeah.
So it'd be 252 or 256 minus 152.
So like 100,000
Yeah.
for budget year 2024. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Again, your reserves are very healthy. We have the benchmark and then where they currently are at, but I did want to note that the majority of your reserves is restricted for your equipment replacement fund. We can go to the next slide. Again, your capital improvement plan. Again, we have a cash funded capital placeholder 2029 to 2033. We do show a large project for a treatment plant upgrade. Noting in there, that's the total. And actually, anticipating doing a clean water fund loan for that and having some principal forgiveness in there. And we do show that in the cash flow when we get to that point.
So that comes back in as like income later on. The grants that we would get,
They would come in as a.
like it would show up kind of like income.
You would.
'Cause you're having all the
right, so then
expenses.
you're just borrowing less, right? And I think the amount was 23.5 million that we were showing of using a clean water fund loan for and receiving like 1.5 of principal forgiveness. So on the next slide, here's that future cash flow analysis. So again, revenues up top, working your way down to the operating maintenance. That net before debt service line, again, we talked about that you want to make sure that line is at least 1.1 because all you have outstanding is clean water fund loans. And that is a requirement of the revenue debt. But again, we'll show the all-in debt coverage. So we do show some net annual cash flows negative. The 2 years, 2025, 2026, the reason it's so high and so low is because we're showing the proceeds from the clean water fund loan all in 1 year. But depending how it goes, you might do some interim financing and reimburse yourself, or you might use it as a draw loan and things like that would change. But to simplify it, we have it shown in 1 year and expense between 2 years. So we do in 2027, you can see that all-in debt coverage is getting down to about 1.17. So that would be something you would want to monitor and make sure that depending on any changes, that you're making sure you stay above the 1.1 and have some cushion room, because this is just a projection and you might have a high operating and maintenance year that would affect that year that you need to prove coverage every single year. And for this analysis, again, just a 1% annual inflation on your operating and maintenance.
So that 1.1 in all-in debt coverage. That's the number that we can't go below, and if we do go below, we don't get the.
That would be your debt coverage, and I believe you only have revenue debt. I can double check that, and if that's the case, that all in would be where you're at, and you would need to make sure that you maintain that above
And if
the
we don't?
1.1. Then you need to report that, and yeah, might have to be forced to do some increases. So it's just something to monitor, that make sure you don't go below that. For this sewer plant upgrade, we are showing, just splitting the increase needed over 2 years. So that's looking at about a 42.5% increase over 2 years, should you do that project, and that's the amount that it comes out to be. And then just doing some inflationary increases alternating every other year, with just a 3%.
Which is very much like the simplified.
Yeah, we
Right.
just do like, yeah, 3% for annual inflation. So then the impact on the sewer side, showing those 42.5% increases, what that comes out as a dollar amount, on a monthly basis, and then the 3% down there, so it's 6.01, 8.57, and then just under $1 in the future years. So comparing the water and the sewer together, we show what the change is over a year. So that $51.01 is the full year change in combination water, sewer. Again, then the following year, $140 and then $103.
So it comes out to 1 point, can you see it? In 2024, it's 1.107% change in red. 51.01 is 1% change.
No, so that is we benchmark that against the median household income.
Oh,
And the American Water Works Association recommends keeping per utility 2 to 3% of that mark to kind of consider your rates as affordable. So even with the increases with water and sewer, you are not even hitting above, hitting 2%. So again, it's 2 to 3% per utility, so it would be 4 to 6% that you would want to maintain, what they consider affordable.
And we're under 2,
And you're under 2 for both
or
utilities.
1.5, really.
Yep,
Yeah, that was the kind of the most shocking benchmark, I think. I caught that in the seminar once, that we were
yep.
barely hanging on to the 1% at one point. Currently, I should say. We're not.
So if you do a sewer rate study, just determining if you want to just do a flat 42.5%, but just like I spoke to with the water, and the PSC does a cost of service and rate design, doing a full sewer rate study because users use the system differently and you want to make it fair and equitable, and they should be paying their fair share. You want to take into consideration any high strength users, and if you have like suspended solids, BOD, things like that, special charges, and making sure those are adequate. And then if you would have any other rate making goals that you would want to be achieving through a full sewer rate study. So here's the option of doing a flat percentage on your current rates. Otherwise, with an impact like this, doing a full sewer rate study and the cost of service would be recommended. So are there any other questions on sewer side?
So you're asking us if we want to do that one lump sum or over a period of time?
For the sewer?
Yeah.
That would be, something that you would want to consider. I mean, we do sewer rate studies. There's engineering companies that do sewer rate studies. If that's the direction you want to go, you can do requests for proposals. But know that, yes, that is something that we do. It's just something that you should consider with increases like that. If you're for sure going through with that project, it would be something you should consider.
We just brought Lisa in because we saw the value in the examples, and with the amount of things that are far aged out of usable life, that, you know, we had to kind of see where we're going with this, so. Little level of comfort for us, I guess, should you say?
Yeah, knowing that you have healthy.
Yeah, where
reserves
we're
and
gonna
see-
be and
yeah.
what's gonna be expected of the utility should projects proceed. Any questions?
Any other questions?
In comparison to other utilities, I don't know if you can answer that off the top of your head. Do we said low compared to other utilities as well of similar sizes, or do you see a lot of?
As for water, sewer.
Yeah,
There's
it's
large
both.
projects and with inflation that increases, like.
It's
I
all
was
over the
saying,
place right now.
we've seen 100%, 200%, 70s. Sometimes we've been able, the PSC argue a lower rate of return, just because then you are generating all this additional cash, which
Right.
helps with paying cash for certain projects, under certain sizes. But yeah, it all varies on the projects and. But quite a few large
Yeah.
increases for sure.
Anything else? Thank you very much for your
Yeah,
time.
thank
It
you,
was
Lisa.
Yeah.
very informative.
Very.
Thank you.
Would anybody be opposed? Steve is on here from MSA, as item F. Would anybody be opposed to moving that item? We can get. He's got an important event to attend, so
So you wanna do it next?
if you guys wouldn't be
So I wanna
opposed.
move F to E. Just flip flop those two.
Thank you.
We'll need a motion.
So,
Second,
second.
all in favor.
Aye.
Next on the agenda, discussion possible action regarding approval MSA design intent on NFPA classifications.
Steve, can you hear us?
Can you hear me? Okay. So in your packets, we have a letter in here. Just gives you a little background on where we're at with the project. I'd say at least 30% of the way done with the project. One of the things that's holding us up here is this NFPA 820 classification. Just addressing some of the requirements. So when we go through a wastewater treatment plant design, we typically look at NFPA, which is National Fire Protection Agency 820 classification for wastewater treatment plants. And oftentimes we can either dismiss a lot of the requirements in there or they don't apply. But in Mayville's case, where we're modifying an existing structure and having to retrofit a lot of existing rooms, we find a lot of items that conflict with what NFPA 820 says. So NFPA 820 is not a code. It is more of a guidance, but we tend to follow the guidance and how it applies to most scenarios. In instances where we feel like, as an engineering firm, that not following NFPA is to the city's advantage, one, for a cost savings, and two, because it's low risk, we often identify those areas and we look for the city, in particular the city's authority having jurisdiction, which is typically the fire department, signing off on those low risk areas so that the liability is not on us for not following NFPA 20, and that your fire department or your authority having jurisdiction agrees with our assessment. So we did that approach with Mayville here in this letter. Our original intent was to have the fire department or your building inspector come out to the treatment plant, do a walkthrough with us and Courtney, show them the areas that we identified as being potential areas where NFPA 820 would apply, but we do not intend to follow the requirements NFPA 820 outlines. And that's what this letter is stating, those areas. Courtney didn't have much success with getting the fire department to want to do a walkthrough. I think it was mostly
Neither of
them
our
not,
comfortable, yeah.
they didn't have familiarity with NFPA 820 or did not have interest in attending the wastewater treatment facility and taking on that responsibility as the authority having jurisdiction. So the next approach was to bring this letter to you, the commission, for review. And I know we've talked about the building a number of times during facility planning, and just the age and condition of it. So when the service building was originally constructed back 30s, and then the latest upgrade in 1984, NFPA 820 didn't exist. So there's areas in there where new classification zones could be identified and you don't have the proper ventilation or separation, physical separation between other common areas that would potentially lead to explosion risk or operator safety. But so we've identified some of these areas where we deem them low risk, and of those, we have like the lower pump room and the lower storage room and the upper pump room and the upper storage room where your raw pumps sit. We are identifying those with NFPA 820 as a class 1 Div 2 area. So that's an area where hazardous gases could be present, and therefore you should derate that space with ventilation. So we plan on derating both that lower pump level where the pumps actually sit, and then the room above that with ventilation. But those air spaces are technically connected to that whole stairwell because there's not a physical separation. A door doesn't count as physical separation, and then because it's part of the stairwell, it connects the whole rest of the building. So if we were to deem those as class 1 Div 2 areas, it would continue on through the rest of that complex, and you'd have to ventilate a whole lot of airspace, or you'd have to put a physical barrier between the two. So we're identifying those two areas as being ventilated, but not the entire building. So we're hoping that with this review and your understanding of how that building has been sitting there for 40 years with very little risk of explosion in those areas currently, and with likely worse ventilation rates at this point than what we would be installing, that you would be able to sign off on those areas for our interpretation and our assessment of proceeding with the design. So there's a couple other areas that come into play too, and that would be the clarifiers themselves. So there's technically an 18-inch measurement off of the surface of the clarifier that would be a class 1 Div 2 area. You have some new clarifier motors that are not explosion proof rated for sitting in that space. So either we would look at potentially having to replace those motors, or have you address that those motors being there with very little risk of potentially having an explosion would be okay maintaining the current status, and that we would just run new intrinsically safe conduit out there in wiring so that in the future, if those motors were to go bad, you could put an XP rated motor and still proceed and meet NFPA 820 in the future. And then the additional space would be the clarifier electrical room. So this is the concrete structure between the two clarifiers. Technically, all of that airspace is class 1 Div 2 rated because the electrical panels are located in the same space as the sludge piping coming from the clarifiers, that those would either need to be by NFPA 820 rules separated in airspace, or to have ventilation to derate it. We're going to address it by not ventilating it, just because that has been in existence for 40 years and you haven't had any issues, nor is it a common issue that there are electrical issues in a space like that. So we would deem that as an unrated space against NFPA 820. If you are in concurrence with that, that's what we're looking for, is the commission to openly ask me questions, or if you don't have any questions, I'm looking for approval on this letter to be able to proceed and design with our understanding of NFPA 820 and the things we would not be doing with NFPA 820 rules. We are addressing a lot of the other NFPA 820 concerns. It's just these select few we identified as ones that it's going to save the city money by not proceeding with the rules spelled out in NFPA 820. And also, it seems to be low risk in our mind.
And it's been there for 40 years now, and we never had a problem. correct?
Yeah, we couldn't like justify.
Everything
the
we're
cost.
talking about here has been there since existence without a problem.
Mhm.
The motors you're referring to, I'm assuming that where they had failed, it could be replaced with explosion-proof motors then at that time, and we'd be in compliance?
Yeah, so it's not, like I said, it's not a code. NFPA 820 is not a code. It's more of a guidance document for following electrical safety standards. Yes, if we run the new intrinsically safe conduit out to there, the only thing that would not be in compliance or follow NFPA 820 rules would be the motors which you have installed recently. So we didn't want to go and just replace them on you when you've already invested money into them.
Open motors, or they closed band cool, or what do we have out there?
I believe they're just non-XP rated. I think Courtney, maybe can better address what you have installed there now. Do you know?
They were direct replacement from Sabo, I don't remember.
Just an open drive now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, an AC motor, you're not gonna have sparks there anyways.
Yeah, it's a very
Low risk.
It's also
situation.
not an area you would expect gas production. It's just that's how the NFPA 820 reads an 18-inch surface measurement from the top of the clarifier is classified as class 1 div 2, has the potential producing gases.
So we're looking for a motion to go with MSA's recommendation on this.
Yeah, what are you looking for, Steve? Are you looking for, so like, signature from the commission stating that the hazards have not existed for 40 years?
Yeah, I'm looking
Whoever-
for concurrence with our assessment in this letter to proceed with essentially not following NFPA 820 in the areas we have identified. As
The
and
commission
potentially,
is most,
what's that?
yes. The commission itself is probably the most familiar with the
Yeah.
facility and the history, whereas the fire department and building
Oh, that
inspector.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So the way NFPA 820 reads is they call it the authority having jurisdiction, or AHJ. And that's the entity that needs to be determined by the commission. If the commission wants to act as that, I'm fine with that. And if we proceed, I think Courtney has documentation of emails sent to both the fire department or fire chief and building code inspector of both stating their lack of familiarity with NFPA 20 and wanting to go assess that area. So I'm looking for a motion for you to proceed with our design intent as laid out in this letter.
I would make that motion.
I would second that motion.
So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, questions? I suppose we gotta take a roll call on that.
Okay, Commissioner Engel?
Aye.
Rudolph?
Aye.
Briggs?
Aye.
Casper?
Aye. Aye. Motion carried, good to go.
Thank
Would you be able to give me a signed copy of that then, Courtney?
You want everybody to be president, right? Yep, I can get that over to you.
Okay. Any other questions on NFPA or the treatment plant design for me? Okay. Well, I thank you for letting me join remotely. I will probably be able to attend an upcoming meeting and give you another update here shortly.
Good.
Anything else for me, Courtney?
I think we're good, as long as you guys are good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Do you have the other 2 pages of? Okay, you go.
Let's see.
Yep. Right, I will send that right over, and I apologize, I probably didn't need to have you guys, go round and round. The item E is, Nolan sent me an email, the draft of the agreement is not quite ready yet, and he had to push it to the May 9th meeting, so it's
So
close, but not quite there.
item E is
Table.
Moving on to F is done. G, discuss a possible action for listing surplus items.
We had a really successful first round of essentially having the ability to get what we need by selling what we don't with the first round of auction items. We got, what was our check, 30,000? was over $30,000 in those 5 surplus items that we had. And we were able to get, the skate mower approved that actually fits some of our workable areas and a 4-wheel drive vehicle with a plow, so that we don't have to drive to Leroy Kikoski and risk lives and things
With the skid loader.
with the scale loader. So, we have a couple of things that are, I guess, just lingering around. Eventually, we're gonna have to clear out, all of these areas regardless. So we were looking to kind of, I don't know, just fund
Why,
this as
why don't
well.
we install these 2 fire hydrants that have never been used when we break one?
Every eddy hydrant that we install or every one that we operate breaks.
They're extremely high maintenance.
We don't have.
One doesn't have a drain plug, even the guy that works on them doesn't care to work on them.
These 2 eddy hydrants, they're brand new, never been used.
Yep,
We can install them, one doesn't have a drain in it.
Oh, okay, well, I didn't know,
One
because I've never
doesn't.
had a problem with an eddy hydrant.
no,
We've had numerous break in the last 5 years, lots of problems.
we usually.
You know, you're looking at, you buy a new fire hydrant, I don't care if it's a Eddy, a Watchers, or a Mueller, it's
Right.
$1,000.
Yeah, easily.
So if you break one, why can't you just put these in? I don't
We-
understand it.
We haven't had
can,
very good luck with
you
that. We can, but
But
we
the
haven't had
the
very good luck
operating,
with
with the
them.
operating rod doesn't work and they bend that a lot, it's just so much easier. When we have to take Waterous apart, it's just, he can have them apart and carries all the parts on the truck, it's in and out. he's
My
done.
contention is when you have a Watchers or a Mueller, that when you're operating it and it breaks, it's gonna slam shut. And you're gonna have a water hammer, it's gonna cause all kinds of damage. A Eddy, that can't happen because they operate different. But you do what you want.
They just, I don't know, we can install them, if, I mean, I gotta have a place to put one without a drain in.
Well, the drain rod is minor, you can put that in any.
No, it doesn't even have a drain in the bottom, yeah, it's a no drain hydrant,
Oh,
for wet areas, so you'd always have
Whatever
to
you
pump it
operate,
out.
you gotta pump it up.
Correct.
Okay, I can see that.
It's
That-
one's a
that's
no
the-
drain,
That's was bought to put in an area where you got a high water table.
right. And then
So we
they're,
have,
they've
yeah, we
been
have,
sitting there quite a while.
Cause you have one right on Alley Street there, that's a no drain.
Yep,
And-
So the original is, you wanna put that on,
yeah, there's just a couple items that we went through that, the generator that we used for the old valve turner, we replaced the valve turner, it's taking up space. We'd rather,
just sits there.
yeah, it just sits there now, so. Sewer, televising, camera and trailer.
Do you even know when to use that last?
What's that?
That's the tell that camera thing? It's in like a snowmobile trailer with a
Yeah,
VCR.
right.
It runs off of VHS tape, so,
Yeah, right, it's, we used to do televising on our own instead of hiring it out.
right,
That's why it was bought,
yeah.
how old is it?
25 years, 30. That was, John Wild built that,
The trailer.
you know, and that was 1993 he started, so.
Are you planning on using the online auction service like the last time?
Mhm.
You know, I look at those all the time, and I thought, I guess the one thing that we sold the last time was a car that looked like a pretty good car, and I was surprised to see that on there.
Yeah. Well, we
Oh,
don't,
that car, yeah.
the Equinox,
Yeah,
well, our best value was in having something that we can operate in bad weather and, you know what I mean? It was kind of a trade-off, but the storage that we have right now too is less than stellar, I guess is the right, because you have to move everything around in order to get anything out of that.
Oh, we
single
don't have the
garage.
Equinox anymore?
No, that was on the last list.
Oh, I thought I'd seen it driven by a different department was using it.
Yeah,
Take
one that
Center
looks
has
just
one
like-
Oh,
too.
do they?
They have one just the same, yeah,
and Parks take the old van,
yeah.
the minivan, is that still running?
I just seen it today, that's right.
That's amazing.
But yeah, that was, I don't know, our best option, I guess we were kind of looking at it as we need to clean out before, you know, any of this happens anyway, and might as well get a couple dollars. What we don't have, I guess, that we would like to fund, we don't have a decent trailer and one that fits. Now that we have a smaller mower, we can accommodate it to a reasonably priced trailer, I guess, but that's one thing we don't have, so. One of the trailers that we have on here was for the old valve turner, is that right? And now it's a hitch version that goes into the back.
Don't
of the
you
truck.
drive out to Kiosk with the skating now?
So, they had in the past, but I didn't want that to happen, especially 16-year-old kids driving down the Kikoski, but, Right now, other departments have been
Oh,
doing that for us, but because we didn't have the ability to trailer it, but we would have that ability again to allow them to do that.
so you're looking at selling off some
Stuff.
stuff you
Stuff,
don't use to
yep.
buy something you can use.
So policy is that we presented here, I offer it to other departments, not for free, for a price, in which we did last time, same thing. And then proceed to auction.
I like it.
All right,
You're,
I don't know, right?
no.
Okay.
You're just following what we did last time.
Yep.
So we're down to the approval of consent agenda, which consists of minutes from March fifth, both the water and wastewater bill. So we'll take a motion and a second and have discussion.
Oh, that's very good.
Second. So we have a first and a second. Any questions on the bills?
Yeah, sorry, that's where I moved it down, that was for the.
We looked at
Remember.
it.
So we have- yeah.
No, not this one.
It's the first time in 15 years, right?
Being on your phone, right?
Anything catch your eye?
In the hot seat.
No, not this one.
If there is no questions or comments, we'll take roll call on that.
Commissioner Engel?
Aye.
Lodoff?
I,
Briggs?
Aye.
Casper?
I,
Buskey?
Aye. Next is water report, well and distribution system report and discussion.
All right, for water, first off, the report on well number 4. Contractors met, plumbing is about 90% complete, HVAC 95% complete, electrical 60 to 70%. Generator is to be delivered and installed in July. Iron filtration has to go in first, and they're still looking at maybe late April to very early May for that. And we did meet regarding the SCADA implementation and needs for well number 4 and the remainder of the water system. The water system will have to be implemented at one time to all work together throughout the different well houses and towers. The last remaining hydrant was removed from the Meadowcraft Loop site. That's something we had requested in early planning stages, and they came back, was that a couple weeks ago? Just in spring here, a couple weeks ago to take that one out as well. Was that an inoperable Eddie?
Just far up to go.
Maybe it's us, we don't have luck with those, so. Consumer confidence report was submitted to the DNR and published for requirements. In a rate case hearing through the PSC is on the docket and set for 5/1. That's published in the newspaper as well with the Zoom link to attend that hearing. I believe it's at 10 a.m. on May 1st. In regards to our students we were working with, I just want to add, C.D. Smith did a really awesome job. One of our students at the high school that we've been working with their counseling department, he had kind of asked us about an interest in project management. So she went down the other day and worked with Carly from C.D. Smith. And the counselor got back to me that she just reaffirmed her desire to go into construction and project management. So our well house was used for that.
So this was a high schooler that went down to the well?
Yeah, she met with, we just linked her with, the project manager from C.D. Smith, and they kind of ran through the well house and how that all works.
Right.
The student interest has been, pretty high lately, so. Yeah. Let's see here. That's all I have for water.
did, you ever find those bent over curb stops that
Yeah, so we went and looked, was it valves that were sinking on Green Bay Drive?
Oh,
Remember we
yeah,
went
it's a
and looked?
busted up valve box. It's gonna get fixed itself. I think that's what it was. We didn't see any bent over curb boxes, but I know there's a
It
sinking.
was, yeah, valving. So we have a lot of them
Cut it
that's
out,
valving,
rebuild it. So
that get hit by plows and thrown down the street kind of,
we fixed one, but it's,
yeah.
we'll
There's
get,
usually quite a few.
yeah, I know you were looking for a house number and I saw him last
Yeah.
night and I didn't think about it. I had other ones
Yeah.
on my mind.
I'm gonna give him a call.
Yeah.
It took a minute, but I think we
I'll
found
see
what we were,
What he saw or what he's looking for.
yeah.
That well at number 4, the pump, are we working on still getting that pulled before we put it online?
Did you read my email this afternoon? You're laughing. We're getting close to utilizing, as we talked about last time, a lawyer in this situation because, water wells, I guess, I don't know what you say, they must have a feud going with the original contract company, USG, and, neither one is really budging and now one's not answering
We're the
at all.
ones
So they
stuck
were
in there.
agreeable in our initial conversations to do this work and my email today was bottom line, we have a contract. I don't care if one of you pays the other one, that's not my problem, but we have work that needs to be done and we have a water supply that needs to be maintained. So
Yeah.
that was the
There'll
gist of it.
be
I
a
don't
lot
know
of
if
work
there was
done to that
that next,
before we can go back online.
Okay.
But that's all under that.
I'm curious,
Under that contract.
Well, pulling it will be, but any additional work from it sitting idle so long, if they gotta do any kind of treatments in there, anything else, it's probably gonna be an add-on. I don't know where we're headed, they don't. Our communication lines are breaking down by the day.
But you've been running that pump once a month, haven't you?
Now, since we started
Not since
building,
the
everything
building.
is gone, we didn't even have power there. I used to run it once a month to keep it fresh.
on there for you.
Yeah.
But now probably for over a year, it hasn't run, so it's gonna need some attention. We're gonna set it up and bleed it off.
Ideally at the same timing as.
Right, and then, the other question, it could be water or sewer on your report is, this, with the snow we had, the heavy snow, how did our new plow and truck work out?
Oh, great. Yeah, I think we
Did you go
saved,
out to
I think we
Kikasi
shaved,
with it?
yep, I think we shaved
Actually,
quite a bit of time off of
We're good.
operations there too, with the 4-foot blade compared to
Yeah,
an
I
8-foot.
used it on the towers, obviously not Clerk Street, but I used it at High Street, I used it at well 5. We were able to get out to Kikoski, we plugged the parking lots with it, it works good.
And,
Very nice.
getting to something like Keystone, I noticed a curb stop in the sidewalk that feeds the White Limestone Museum is missing the plug.
Yeah.
It's open, you know that already?
Yeah, I seen that. I'm debating how to fix that.
Okay.
I don't know if we're gonna have to cut concrete out and replace that. Yeah,
That's all I got on water.
and that may be replacing a whole, just a slab.
That might be the simplest.
I think, I've been talking to, one of our DPW employees who was a previous mason.
See the guy that fixed all the sidewalks up on German Street that time?
He might,
Oh, he's gone. There's a different one that was,
oh, yeah, it's a different one.
Anything else on water? Now we'll move on to wastewater report, sewer system report and discussion.
all right, we started our, called wet testing, it's whole effluent toxicity, that's, last year on this time, or 2 years ago now, that's when we had our monthly testing that was extremely costly. That's when they, tested the fish, gain weight or, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, so now we're back to a regular twice a year cycle after we went through that. That started this week, so,
You missed the fish?
yeah, we'll see what
And I think
happens.
if we pass a few times, we can go to annually.
Yeah,
right?
and
Once
that's
we,
in consideration too for our upcoming permit renewal too. All that information's in, so,
Good.
we'll get a chance to review that as well and state our case for a lessened schedule as well. As Steve said.
Would it help to show pictures to them from nice walleyes I can have?
Use that fish brain app and show them that it's thriving and
I
well.
have pictures of nice walleyes come out of rock here. Not quite a plant, but.
Well, it's all downstream.
Yeah, it's downstream.
I'm hearing that same thing.
All right, we can send them if it helps.
You're doing a nice job. Save the walleye.
Save the
I'll have to
walleye.
get more pictures.
All right, location, I want a GPS location on each catch if that helps.
Everyone else.
No, maybe within a few miles.
Secret, right? As Steve said, facilities planning, we're about 30% design. And regarding costs for the project, as she just went through in detailed, I had some questions on some misinformation that had been circulating and we wanted to clarify. The cost is not 35 million. Initial estimates place the project around 25. Like Lisa said, not accounting for the principal forgiveness that comes off that amount. And I did confirm with MSA I asked about inflation and if that would affect our numbers, and they said, currently they're sitting pretty much the same. It remains pretty much unaffected. Let's see here, and our project timing is still directly in line with the somewhat unprecedented funding available, so we're sitting at a good time. And again, that's a 20-year term at a rate near or below 2%, so we're sitting.
Can I ask on this study that Ehlers did, refresh my memory, who has to have that done? Did we do that, or the city, or
Nicole and
Nicole,
I did for
this was?
future
okay.
planning, yep.
Okay,
And it was under our threshold for cost, and it was kind of a jump in now or never.
Right,
sort of
just to
thing,
get
never.
be more comfortable with the future and,
Oh, it's getting another set of eyes looking at it.
right.
Well, with all the things that are kind of flying at us and the uncertainty of the, you know, the aging infrastructure and things, like we gotta know what to.
because I didn't remember it coming in front of the board, so you guys asked. for it.
Yep. We also met with them as MSA and we researched with other municipalities. They had an equipment listing, essentially. Go work with other municipalities, you know, their equipment recommendations, what works, what doesn't from an operational standpoint. What do you like, what do you hate? And then of course, coming down to cost as well, so that potential for cost on the plant is lessened by our decisions made, obviously, in equipment. I think do you remember what the last item on the sheet was? I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer. This pump cost,
Oh, yeah.
you know, the first
One dumps.
option works perfectly well, costs $100,000 per pump, but option 2, because it has a brand name on it, is $550,000.
Yeah, it was quite a difference.
You know, I think that's part of the planning too, is the choices that are made in that are gonna be,
The guy's been talking to a lot of guys. We call a lot of different places.
yeah,
I know I've been in talks with different guys. Some pumps they've had for 30 years and they said them are the ones to go with. Either swear by it or swear at it. I've talked to both types of guys.
So we looked
From
at-
here to Escanaba,
Right.
so.
we looked at other municipalities, we looked at where the product is based, we looked at, how available the product is, if it's made out of the country.
Service was a big one.
If there's only a service tech in California, I'm not paying for his hotel, his drive is, you know, that justifies the cost pretty quick, but we did go through the whole rundown of equipment on that one, so. Long meeting. And I did submit the required response regarding the non-compliance notice received from the DNR. That was in regards to the chlorides. So we got the notice for basically, I think there was one snow melt month in the past couple of years, and then July through September, where we have a hard time with our industrial customer. We are working with that industrial customer. We can't really know anything until they start operating again. There is no effluent to manage at this current point.
Do they have a good idea on how they can reduce it?
Yeah, and I think they fixed it. I think it was due to turnover and some installations on water softeners too, where the regeneration was, did they hook it in
They
backwards?
did something was piped in wrong and I think
Yeah.
they must have changed systems.
It was very
Because
wrong.
they got rid of a couple big brine tanks, probably a couple thousand gallons of brine tanks they had that are no longer there. I think they changed a little bit of their processing,
Yeah,
but I hope that it makes a difference. So they're working at it.
yeah, so chlorides are one of our bigger hurdles, but I did talk to the DNR again too about that. Our limit's 555 milligrams per liter. We usually sit around just the average flows, like 500 to 520. So we don't have a lot of room for error, and they will not be changing. I tried to get a chloride variance, and they said so each river has its own, what they call TMDL. So that is the maximum that river can accept. So it doesn't matter if we can't make that, it's what the acceptance of the river and the studies upstream and downstream are allowing. So we can't even get a variance on the chlorides. So same applies to the leachate arguments. The chlorides are so astronomically high, I don't have room for error in that situation. There's no wiggle room.
I remember 40 years ago, when we were doing this the last time, they said at that time that we had one of the tightest permits in the state because we were right above the marsh.
Yeah,
And I can believe that, and I don't want to see us, filling the walleyes in the marsh.
yeah. So the very end of that non-compliance letter that we received from the DNR was that the fine for overages and occurrence, if they should have to submit those charges essentially to the Department of Justice, is $25,000 per day of non-compliance. So we're walking a fine line as it sits.
We'd have to do quite a rate case to cover that.
Yeah, so, so that's the,
Out of curiosity, is there a treatment for the chlorides? Is there a way that can be removed?
with like reverse osmosis filtration, and that's, yeah, so if you try to imagine what a full-scale reverse osmosis system would cost, it's,
Yeah, a lot of money.
yeah. Waupun has one for their drinking water system. It's a very large installation. I used to,
Can do anything if you wanna pay for it.
yeah,
That takes a lot of water to do reverse osmosis.
yeah, it's a lot of maintenance, on the, I guess they would call them cylinders, but there's just like stacks of cylinders in there. And then you have to do regular testing. There's a conductivity testing that you would do on each of those cells, so it's pretty labor intensive to test each of those and then replace all the cells as well, but I wouldn't even wanna guess what we would be talking to. Full system reverse osmosis, but nobody in town would have a water softener anymore, but.
I guess I was thinking if we are pressured to take the leachate, maybe that's something that they can do out there, is they can pre-treat the water, maybe.
They could pre-treat at their cost, yeah. I mean, our cost would be, I wouldn't even wanna take a guess at what that would cost. That would be pretty insane. And another employee on it.
Have you heard anything about the water softener program?
Not much. I had a couple of people that said they might have been interested a little.
Another person,
You did? Okay.
another person came in.
And we're looking at it. Okay. So he's done communities before where he said he's had no interest at all, so I'm pretty happy with
Well,
one, or some interest, at
well, you
least
should
some
have
questions.
go for that, right?
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything yet, so I don't,
Might be waiting to do them all.
yeah, see if he gets a
So you're
couple.
the poster boy for this.
There you go.
My wife said after the coals come up, cleans.
Yep,
There you go.
soft hair and clean clothes, good.
That's the important thing. Yeah, the soft hair is what concerns me.
This morning, we had a fun event this morning, so this morning we lost all the power to the plant.
Boy.
When they come running out the door, when I pull in like this, it was a little concerning. So the internal breakers in the plant are extremely weak. We've had this problem before. One of the main breakers has been an issue before. Any electrician says, like, you can maybe hold on for one more time, and these are, last time what I bought out of a warehouse in
New Jersey.
eBay in New Jersey, I think it was like I wanna say it was like almost a $4,000 breaker at the time, and we have probably,
Multiples.
It's because they're old.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're old and they don't,
Thomas Edison on?
pretty much, they don't make them anymore.
40 years old.
Is that all those in that back room there?
There's
Yeah,
multiple rooms
yeah,
with panels too, but our main central location is the one that they're the weakest.
And will those all be replaced with this upgrade?
It's hard to do.
Yeah, so between that and the upgrade and the SCADA system there, so what we learned this morning that was pretty scary, so there was a electrical feed coming to the plant. We called Jim Frame from Alliant. He came out and confirmed that feed. What we found weird is the generator never ran. And nothing alarmed. So the whole plant was at a standstill and it never alarmed. So technically it could have been like that from, when those guys leave the previous day to the next morning.
The transfer switch never kicked in.
It was power fed to the transformer, so when it's an internal problem, we don't know
It
it.
doesn't notice.
Yeah,
It
so
doesn't-
internally it
doesn't
doesn't
recognize
know
it
if the
internally.
generator was being fed with power, but the plant was out of power. So it never alarmed because it didn't have power. And
We
then,
had no alarms and no generator
Yeah.
kicked on because there was still power coming to the transformer, feeding the
We're
generator.
gonna do that differently.
Yeah, we're gonna do that
Yeah.
typically.
That had happened before, I don't recall that ever happening.
I lost that blower about 3 times since I've been there, yeah.
And there
That's
was
how I
a-
knew what breaker to hit.
There was a similar note in the blower panel cabinet from 1993 that we said was like written in Sharpie, that was similar.
LW Allen's been here numerous times and all the notes are in every time they've been there since 93. Always adding more timers and more relays to keep it
That
functioning.
must have been Greg Martin writing. that.
Yeah.
He was working for
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that was the GM, it says in
Yep.
93, and then it was in 98 and 2002, it just goes on, and they kept adding to the panel to keep it working.
Yeah.
And now we're running out of
Did this
panel.
happen yesterday during the eclipse or what?
This morning, as soon as we started,
That's what we blamed it on.
the eclipse was causing some problems. But yeah, that was one of them, so that was kind of scary that we have no notice that anything's wrong. Similar, the HVAC system, our HVAC systems run off of, it's a PC-based program. We have a difficult time using it or understanding it, but, we lost that again the other day and called in some services, because that lab has to be temp controlled, so we had to get somebody in there pretty quick, otherwise all of our POD results and things start failing due to that DNR requirement, so. We were able to get it back and running for the time being. That's all I have for wastewater.
Nothing on wastewater.
It was eventful.
Yeah. So next we will convene the closed session pursuant 19.85, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which this governmental body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility.
Would you guys be opposed, Tim's involved in this? Would anyone be opposed to him staying for the closed session? It's not really a big deal, it's just,
Well,
is anybody opposed to that?
You just can't tell anyone.
Yeah, you're sworn to
No,
secrecy.
no one knows the neighbors.